Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Thomas Apologia video. In today's video we're going to be reacting to a scholar of textual criticism, a lion in the field of polemics, the man who debunked Christianity in under 1 minute. Who is this man? Of course it's Hamza's death.
Are you serious?
Mark wasn't a disciple of Jesus. Matthew apparently was.
Okay.
Matthew witnessed the miracles of Jesus. Matthew heard the explanations of the parables of Jesus.
Does it say where Mark asked Matthew?
No, Matthew copies verbatim 70% of the text out of Mark into his gospel, as does Luke. Which means they use Mark as a template for what they write. The question is this: why would a man who was with Jesus need to ask a man who wasn't with Jesus, what did Jesus say?
I would guess, from my point of view, is that if he was there with Jesus, he was also part of the Holy Spirit, so he knows what
Mark wasn't a disciple of Jesus. Say there was a party last night at your local Greek restaurant, yeah? And you went. I didn't go. Then you come to me and ask me what happened at the party. Does that make any sense? You were there, smashing plates.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. Would it make any sense for you to come to me
No.
and ask me what happened?
No.
Right. This is exactly what Matthew's doing with Mark.
Firstly, we could dispute the idea that Mark's gospel is the first written, but let's run with this presupposition that Hamza has, that Mark was wrote before Matthew and Matthew copied from Mark rather than the other way around. We know that Mark's gospel was based off Peter's testimony, and if Peter was considered as the leader of the 12, there's no surprise that Matthew would borrow from his testimony. There are multiple historical examples of eyewitnesses borrowing testimony for writings that they witnessed, such as Xenophon borrowing from Hermogenes when writing about the death of Socrates. This is obviously because Xenophon was not present at the death of Socrates, although he was one of his disciples, so he borrowed this testimony from Hermogenes. Likewise, Matthew is not present throughout much of his gospel, and the first time he appears is in chapter 9. Matthew was also not present for Jesus' passion, as he fled in Matthew chapter 26. So Hamza's Greek restaurant analogy fouls, as he's presupposing in this analogy that you're here for the entirety of this dinner event at the restaurant, and your friend has no information from other eyewitnesses at the event. However, let's say that your friend wasn't at the event, however, he knew a guy that was present through parts of the event that you were not present at. You could then reliably ask your friend what happened at the portions of the dinner that you were not present at, and it would absolutely be fine for him to provide you with those details as he received them from an eyewitness. What's furthermore is there is plenty of evidence to suggest that Matthew actually did write his gospel. For example, the most mentions of currencies is included in Matthew's Gospel, which is what we would expect to see if Matthew the tax collector had wrote it. Furthermore, Matthew records a 1st century financial exchange for the temple tax in Matthew chapter 17, which could not have been done by an author from a later period. Furthermore, all early manuscripts of Matthew's Gospel we have attribute the authorship of this Gospel to him. Take for example Papyrus 4 and 62. These are 2 2nd century manuscripts which attribute this gospel to Matthew. The early church also who received these traditions tell us who wrote these gospels. Tertullian, St. Irenaeus and St. Clement of Alexandria all tell us the authors of the gospel. Now, if throughout the vast Roman Empire at a time of Christian persecution we unanimously get the same answers as to who wrote the Gospels, not only from the Church Fathers but in the manuscript tradition that we see, then it would be reasonable to suggest that these people have not individually made up these concepts, but rather are receiving a common tradition. As St. Augustine once said, quote, "How do we know the authorship of the works of Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, Varro, and other similar writers, but by the unbroken chain of evidence? So also with the numerous commentaries of the ecclesiastical books, which have no canonical authority, and yet show a desire of usefulness and a spirit of inquiry. How can we be sure of the authorship of any book, if we doubt the apostolic origin of those books which are attributed to the apostles by the church, which the apostles themselves founded on?" So, to add to St. Augustine's point, we know that Tacitus wrote Annals because it's attributed to him. However, Annals is not attributed to Tacitus until 300 years after Tacitus wrote Annals. Likewise, with the writings of Thucydides, they are not attributed to him until 200 years later as well. So then why apply an even more skeptical lens to the New Testament, which has its attributions well earlier and found within the community that received this tradition? It seems like there's a double standard that skeptics apply over the New Testament when they compare it to other things in weighing up whether Matthew, Mark, Luke and John are the authors of these documents. But if you guys did enjoy this video, please do like and subscribe, as your support goes a long way in helping to keep this channel afloat. With that being said, God bless.